episode of Piping Talks. And this time we have a drummer again. I feel like I'm getting more drummers on the show, which is obviously for me it's awesome. I hope that people enjoy listening to drummers as much as they enjoy listening to pipers. But today we have a special guest. We have current World Solos drumming champion Stephen McWhirter from Glasgow, I think, or Scotland, based in Scotland right now, but not from Scotland originally. So we'll dive more into it. But this is a fresh episode. He just won the World Solos last Saturday in Glasgow for the 10th time, if I'm not mistaken. And we'll talk more about it. But yeah, few themes around his career so far. Joining SFU, obviously being a leading drummer of one of the best band in the world, Inveraray District, and then how does he do it? How does he win every year the World Solos Championship? So we'll hear all about it. And but yeah, first off, Stephen, how are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on. I've been enjoying your podcast.
I'm glad. I saw you subscribed yesterday.
What's that?
I got a little notification. I saw you subscribed yesterday to the YouTube channel. I was like, yes.
I did. They've been a welcome addition to my commute to work.
Nice. I wasn't sure. Was it when you run or is it when you go to work?
Whenever I'm going to work. Yeah.
Nice. Cool.
I've not been running for a while, as you can see.
No comment. Me too. But we've known each other for a number of years. And funny enough, I was bringing this up to a guest the other day. I don't know if you remember. I stayed like a few days in the flat in Glasgow when you were staying with Gus. It was quite funny.
Yeah,
and it was a long time ago. I think I said something like 10 years ago, but then I looked it up. It was definitely more than that. So it's crazy. But yeah, can you obviously I imagine people know who you are, but can you tell us a little bit more roughly like where you're based, and then how you started playing the drum?
Yeah, so I live in Falkirk, Scotland now. So it's pretty central. It's good for commuting the band and work. So we've been here, I think, about 7 years now. It's in Glasgow before that. Only ever lived in the one flat in Glasgow, funny enough, because when I moved to Scotland, I moved in with Gus Sicard, the flat where I met you. And then my wife and I bought that flat, and we lived in it for a while. And then
you're kidding?
Yeah, we bought that flat, and then we moved through to Falkirk because the commute from Glasgow to Edinburgh daily was too much. But yeah, obviously moved to Scotland to play with the band to take over as lead drummer. Kind of didn't really think about it too much. I just kind of moved and figured everything out as I went along. I didn't have a job, didn't have a car, didn't have very much money, but I don't know, kind of landed on my feet, I guess.
Yeah, was it so you moved because it was clearly like purely for the band to be closer to band practices, and because you were in Northern Ireland before, right?
Yeah, I was still living at my parents in Northern Ireland, but before that I had obviously been commuting quite a lot to Vancouver to play with SFU. So I was kind of away more than I was at home. I would kind of spend the winter working at home and then save up as much money as I could and then head off to Vancouver like Easter time and stay right through to the Worlds.
Wow.
So yeah, I was like kind of part-time Vancouver, part-time Northern Ireland. So
right. I was I have a theme that I want to start, and maybe I'll talk to you again about it. But it's like guest players. You have a lot more now, like flying members. They're like flying from you have in your core a few drummers from North America. They're flying to Scotland to play, and super interested into how the kind of like the challenges and the good and bad things about being remote and stuff like that. So, but how was it for you? Like you were playing the drum in Northern Ireland, and you said was SFU always a band that you were interested in, or like how did the connection happen?
It's actually quite an interesting one. I was thinking about this because I knew you were going to ask about SFU, and
oh, here we go.
I always wanted to play with the Victoria Police. Like, I always told my parents, like, one day I'm getting on a plane to Melbourne and I'm going to play with the Vic Police. Like,
Literally, Australia to
yeah, like,
English, the opposite.
I loved the band, wanted to drum full time. They had a job, and of it, there was never an offer there. But as a kid, that was the band I wanted to play with. Like, I loved everything about them, and yeah. So then, obviously, like 1999 came, and they didn't come to the Worlds, and they were finished, and whatever. I'd always liked SFU as well, and I'd always loved Reid's core. So what actually happened was we used to go to the piping and drumming school in Northern Ireland every Saturday morning. And I was good pals with James Laughlin, and he had been out for a summer to go to Piping Hot Summer Drummer. And he'd come back and he had told me about it, and I was like, oh man, I want to go to that. Like, that sounds amazing. So I was probably like 17, 18 at the time maybe. And then I decided that I would write to Reid. So I wrote a letter. Like,
Was it a letter or was it an email? Was it a letter?
I don't even have email at this time. So handwritten letter, sent it to the university, like, for attention of Reid. Reid being Reid didn't reply for months and months and months. Well, actually, he's come to think of it, he didn't actually reply to the letter. But one day the house phone rang, and I picked it up, and he was like, "Hey, this is Reid Maxwell here from Vancouver, Canada," and I was just like,
"Wait, this is a joke?"
It's like, hello. Yeah, I was a complete shock, and I think this was maybe January time, probably February, and he said, "I got your letter about coming out to Piping Hot and all the rest of it. We'd love to have you come visit, but I'm actually just calling you to see if you would like to come play in the band this year." So I'm just like standing in the living room, like talking to Reid. Well, I wasn't talking; I was just standing with the phone like a statue. And
is that a prank? Is that a friend just calling as a prank?
Yeah, that was crazy. I said, "Look, I actually can't give you an answer on this right now. Like, I'm serving my time as a coach builder. I was only about halfway through my apprenticeship, and different things. And obviously, I was playing in Cullyback at the time, and I just, I was like, oh, so much to think about. And it was actually my mum kind of like changed my mind. Well, didn't change my mind. She kind of made my mind up for me. She said, like, you know, if I was to see you coming to play in the Grade 1 circle with SFU, it would be a really proud moment. And I was like, playing the emotional card, you know. So
yeah.
I'm like, right, I've got to do this. This might be the only chance that I ever get. So I spoke to work. SFU actually Robbie McNeil wrote a really good letter to my employer asking for like 3 months off.
Wow.
Like a exceptional circumstances kind of thing. So yeah, I only joined SFU for a year and then stayed for 7. As soon as the band played the Belfast Waterfront and the Glasgow Concert Hall, I think in March that year. I have the poster somewhere, but I can't see the date. So I had like 4 weeks, I think, to learn like 5 sets for the concert. So yeah, I was just like playing non-stop to learn that, and then I went out in May and stayed to the Worlds. And we done Maxwell that year as well, which was great.
Oh, nice! Yeah, for you to visit too, you get like you see coming from Europe, and you're doing Maxwell. You're staying in Vancouver, which I imagine you had never been before. Like, yeah, it must have been like great way to meet people.
Yeah, I met so many people that year, and I just kind of, I guess it was the first time in my life I'd actually ever realised that the world is a much bigger place than Ballymena. You know, like the small bubble that I grew up in, and
right,
not in a bad way, obviously, but just it was just a huge place, lots of people to meet, and yeah, I was like, I kind of wanted to see more of it. When I got a taste of it, I wanted more. Um, Obviously, I wanted to.
So your plan was, sorry, but your plan was just to go for a year. You got this letter and you're out of work for 3 months. You're going over to Vancouver. You're earning 100 scores in 3 weeks to play all those concerts. And then you're like, this is it, I'm going home. But no, you're like, actually, I want to do this again.
Yeah. I just well, what had happened was I was only in Vancouver about maybe a week, and I had got an email address by that point. Um,
Nice.
so an email from the band came in, or to the whole band, and it was talking about they were doing a concert tour in the following year, the following spring, 2003. So they were doing, they were going to Halifax, Nova Scotia, Toronto, and Worcester, just outside Boston. So I was like, oh, I've got to do this. Like,
I know.
I want to play these big concerts. Like, this will be great. So when I came back from the Worlds in 2002, like, I absolutely hated my job. Like, my eyes had been open to the world, and I was like, I worked with so many people that all they ever done was complain about their job. I'm like, oh, if I could get something else, and this, that, and the other. So I was like, you know what? I don't want to be that person. So one day I just had enough, and I packed up my toolbox and like walked out at
That was
lunchtime.
it.
I just never went back. And then I just got like wee odd jobs here and there to make money and save up enough. I'd saved up quite a bit to move in the January because I kind of wanted to be part of the band. Like, I didn't want to be just a fly-in player. I wanted to like experience the band, and so yeah, that was great. I moved in January and stayed right through until August, and
That's amazing.
yeah, that was great. Shared a house with um, two pipers from SFU and a piper from the Grade 2 band at the time. So we had a great time. That was good times.
Did you ever consider moving full time to Vancouver? Was it always like an option that you were like, what if I just go there full time?
Yeah, many times. And I actually I went to speak to a lawyer, an immigration lawyer, about moving. But at that time, Canada was a very difficult country to move to unless you had individual skills that a Canadian citizen basically couldn't bring to the economy.
Right.
Now it's changed quite a bit, and if I were to move, I probably could move on like a exceptional talent visa. I can't remember the exact name of it. I have one for the United States.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's the same here. Yeah,
but Canada has that now as well, I believe. So it's
could be.
But
Yeah.
I'm glad, I'm glad I didn't get in, because then I wouldn't be married and have two kids here. So
I know. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's funny because you spent so much time there, and I was curious if it was always like something that was in the back of your mind and to move there full time. So you did 7 years. That's impressive. And then so you won the Worlds twice, 3 times.
No, just once. Yeah.
Oh, 09? That was your last year, wasn't it?
2007, 2008. Sorry.
Oh, 8.
I didn't play 09. I had decided mid-season that was going to be my last year. Because the kids band back in Inveraray were doing really well. They were aging out, and we were talking about what we're going to do, keep them together, go to an adult grade, and all the rest of it. So I'd said to Stuart, if you want to do it, then I'm now ready to move on and do my own thing.
Right. Because for those that don't know, you and Stuart, Stuart Little, who's the pipe major of the band, you guys were both playing for SFU together, right? So you were traveling back and forth at the same time. So you built a relationship. Did you know Stuart before going to SFU, or the kind of the connection, the friendship was built through travels to the summer in Vancouver?
It's the most bizarre thing ever. He was the first person I ever sat beside on the SFU band bus, and we just like hit it off right away. And it was, we were both kind of like band geeks, and like we got all the world's recordings and remembered what tune every band played, and that was crazy. So yeah, we just kind of hit it off musically.
That's so funny. And then you were like, wait, your accent is not from here. It's not Canadian. Like, where are you from?
I knew who Stuart Little. I knew who Stuart Little was. He's like
Right, right. But it
famous,
was, yeah, that's funny.
famous as Carnegie Hall.
Yeah, I know, true. Right, and then so transitioning into Inveraray District. I mean, I can't remember when I first met you, but I know you were still helping the Juvenile band, and you were the band was transitioning into grade two. Obviously, I bet you have so much stories to tell. But if you had in that space between Juvenile when you had the kids all the way through to grade one the first year, what is like one memory, maybe a band trip or a competition or just like a moment that you were like that was it made you happy to be where you were with the band, leaving SFU and then starting in Inveraray District?
Um, I think I think one of the biggest things was Inveraray winning the world's drumming and band contest at the worlds the same day that SFU won. Like my last contest with them. I think that was huge because it was kind of like it was a good way for me to go out of SFU, and it was a great way for the kids to leave the juvenile grade. Um, so that was quite big. And then, I mean, the one moment that stands out where I knew we probably were going to have quite a good chance. Um, I don't want to say of surviving, but I can't really think of another way of putting it. It was the major in Greenock in 2009. It was a really scorching hot day, and I remember the band playing that day just before going to final tuning, and like all the top pipe majors were over watching the band. Like the band sounded really good, and it was a bunch of kids. And they had no idea. Like they were so naive to like how good the band sounded or how well they were playing, or
Right.
and I was able to kind of step back and be like, oh, that was really good. That was special. Um, but grade two, we kind of hit grade two at a time where there maybe wasn't really a strong grade two. Um,
A competition, you mean like with
yeah,
other
like
bands and stuff? You mean?
grade two is a bit up and down. Some years it's really strong, some years it's not. I think we hit it lucky, and we were obviously fortunate enough to win everything that year. But going to grade one that was just a different ball game. Like you think you're ready and you think you know what you have to do. You think you'll get the players that you want, but you don't get any of it. It's like it's just not ever as easy as you first imagine. Um, so yeah, first couple of years were a bit of a struggle to get people in and to keep them, and there's been lots of people through the door. Stayed for a few years, moved on as better players, then wanted to come and play, and the standard has just kind of crept up over the
Yeah.
years. Um,
Yeah. Do you think I remember you had a good mix of even in grade two of like experienced drummer, that had played in grade one, Brummel, being one of them,
yeah,
and then you had kids that were like, I mean, probably 17, 6, I mean, I don't know how old, but it was a good mix. Was it super important for you when you moved up from juvenile to grade two, to kind of create, um, this like nice balance between experienced players that have been there for a while, and then younger players are just like, I'm so happy to be here and play.
Yeah, I think the most important thing for both Stuart and I was it was their band. Like it was the kids' band that, and it was their hard work that got them to where they were. So we had to do right by them and give them the opportunity to play at that higher level. Um, and if that level wasn't what we wanted, then we had to kind of put that to the side. Like um, naturally, naturally, as the band got better, some players um, just decided that they had kind of reached their level, and they stepped away. Um, and then as that happened, then I would find someone else to come in and replace them with, with a bit more experience. And
Was it
there's not
tough?
many
Was it
left.
tough for you? Was
Oh
it tough
yeah.
for you to, as a teacher? Um, I mean, I think it must be, but you're a teacher, and you on the, and you bring those kids up to a level, and then things happen, life. Some people leave the band and whatnot, but I imagine you would want to have a core with like kids that you brought to that level, and play with them.
Yeah. Um, I think it was always disappointing whenever one of the original members left. Yeah. Um, I remember the first time it happened. It was a kid called Robert Dempster, and I think he
I
was
remember, yeah.
12. He had just come second at the World Solo Drumming Championships in the Juvenile, and like 3 weeks later, he wanted to talk to me, and he was quitting. And I talked to
Damn.
him, and I tried to talk him out of it, and I was like pulling my hair out. I was like, "You can't quit. You're too good." Like, uh, but he had just he had just reached that point where, and I don't know if it's because he was so young, and because he had been involved from he was so young. I think sometimes maybe people are a victim of their own success and they burn out a bit. I don't know. I do still regularly think about how good that guy would have been if he had stuck at it. But yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, there was always an element of disappointment in in one of the original members quitting. But then you know, I remember I remember the disappointment that I know that I caused Adrian Hoy whenever I left Kalibaki, because I was kind of the first original member to leave. So, but I was leaving to go play somewhere else and not just stop drumming. So it was like it's a bit it's a bit gutting whenever a talented player just stops. That's hard to take,
Is
you
that
know.
what you think? Oh, that's so funny, because I would think if you're a leading drummer and a talented member of your core leaves to go somewhere else, it's kind of like the competition is getting better, right? So, but you're the opposite, which I think is so true. It's like, damn, this person, this kid was super talented, and just quit altogether and don't continue. That's a shame. Yeah, that's funny.
Well,
I would
yeah,
think,
I would rather. Yeah, I'd much rather. I'd much rather a drummer kept drumming than just stopped. That's at least
yeah,
they're bringing their skills somewhere. Um,
yeah,
so
yeah. Nice. That's interesting what you think about it. I wanted to bring that topic because I talk to pipe majors, leading drummers, and it's so fun. It doesn't matter the level, doesn't matter where you are at. You can be world champion like you guys, or someone in grade 2 and grade 3, and you always deal with convincing people to come to practices, or trying to bring like a team spirit together. And it's good to kind of think back of the first days, like first years at Inveraray, where you had that core team, young team, and they sort of went their own way. But it although the band is doing really well now, it's still kind of sad to think back about those moments where you wish you had more home ground sort of players, right?
oh yeah, absolutely. But life moves on, and people grow up and they get more responsibility, and it becomes, you know, less about the band and more about the rest of their life. So
Yeah.
I didn't fully understand that. Well, I understood it. I just didn't want to admit it, I guess, until, until I had kids. That wasn't until I had kids that I became more understanding of other people's situation, and kind of like looked at things a bit differently. Like before, I could not comprehend why someone wanted to be in the band and didn't want to come to practice. Like that didn't compute in my head. Do you know what I mean? But then you get a bit older and you have, kids and more responsibility. You realize, oh, you know what? I can't actually go to practice tonight, or I could do without going to practice because I've got something else to do or whatever. So,
Right.
yeah, I think for me, it's a lot of it has been about finding the balance of, cutting the guys the slack that they need at certain times of the year, in the hope that they'll repay me whenever I really need them to be there all the time.
Right.
A Wednesday night practice here or there during the winter, it's not going to make or break your core or your band. But when they don't show up the week of a major, then you've got problems. Do you know what I mean? Then you've got
Right.
You've got a decision to make on the Saturday. So that's kind of how I run the core. I'm not too worried about people missing practice here or there for whatever reason, but as long as they don't, kick the backside out of it, it's not a big deal.
Right. You put a lot of trust in people, that everyone is an adult in some ways, and they know the work that they have to put into to be performant and want to win. Yeah. Moving into sort of the writing aspect of obviously you have a very unique and strong style within the pipe band. Drumming. You have people that would say there's a sort of Tom and Gordon have a very specific style, and Jim as well had a very specific style, but you have your own unique voice in some ways. Have you felt like in the past, obviously you had to adapt the level? It's funny because you're the people that have been since the beginning. I'm thinking about Gus or other people that probably saw the evolution in your music as you got better through the rank and you got better players. How do you do you have a strategy in terms of like putting music together when Stuart will send you some music for the next medley or the next MSR? Like, what's the process through the year? If you think through September through the Worlds, is it always refining? Is it always? I know you're smiling because I don't want you to share your top secret stuff with everyone, but
I'm not protective about that stuff. No, first of all, I would say I'm not protective about that because Reid was never protective about how he went about it, and if he had been and didn't open the floodgates of information for me when I was young, I wouldn't have known half the stuff that I do now. So I think it's important that people actually open up and pass on what they know, because it's only going to be for the good of the art form. In terms of like, every year's a bit different, to be honest. Every year's different, but you know our medley MSRs or MSRs, like you can't really go wrong with three tunes. It's sometimes you've played two of the three tunes for 10 years and you put a new one in, like you don't really think about how they go together. It just kind of, an MSR style for me is an MSR style. It all kind of follows the same format. I would say medley wise, our band is a nightmare. Like, from the outside looking in, it probably looks like the most organised musical product ever. But I can absolutely tell you it's not. It's I guess the most the nicest way to put it is it's organic. Um, it just kind of develops and evolves through the year. Like we're all kind of the same mindset. Like myself, Stuart, and Ali Henderson, we're all kind of the same mindset that the world's medley is the final like press of the CD. Like that's the final medley. That's the product. Um, we've changed stuff the week of the Worlds before. It's like something's just been bugging us and not setting 100%, and we've like just made a split second change to make it feel right. Because for me, once it feels right, then that's the product you want to go with. But in terms of writing, I get the stuff. I don't spend too much time thinking about the fine detail. I just try to get the big picture and get it out to the guys. Like I much rather I hear the product develop quicker when I hear a group of people playing it. I could sit in my room here and play the individual medley tunes till the cows come home, and it still will never give you the effect or the impact of a core. So I just get my thoughts down on paper, um, and get them out. And sometimes you get it right first time. Most times you don't. And it's just a kind of an evolution of the score then as the winter progresses and as the spring progresses. Everybody has an input. If someone thinks, "Oh, I think we should try this. I think we should try that." Yeah, let's try it. Like don't ever dismiss it before you try it, because you don't know. You just don't know if it's the next best phrase that could be in a score, or a dynamic, or a chip change, or whatever. Um, and I enjoyed that about SFU as well. I enjoyed that everybody was able to say, "Oh, how about if we try this, or how about if we try that?" Like, you feel part of the team more. You feel more part of the team if you at least have a voice. Obviously, you know, I'll usually have the final say on what we go with, but yeah, it's
You try to make it collaborative, right? Having people, have an input in some of the music that you play, and it's not just you
yeah. I mean,
from A to Z.
don't get me wrong. I would never farm out a tune to someone. Say you write a hornpipe, you write the jig. I write everything, but I'm quite open to change, because sometimes people, sometimes when you spend a long time on a score, you kind of get wrapped up in this one idea that you've been fixated on, that you think's right, and then when you put it out and someone plays through it, or you play through it as a core, like instantly it's like, oh, you know what? That actually doesn't sound the way it does in my
Or
head.
yeah.
And then you know once you've heard it exactly what direction it needs to go. Um, so I quite enjoy that part of it. We try to get on the floor as early with the pipes as possible. Like even if it's just if I could dish scores out and we could be on the floor that same day, like just sight reading, because
Right.
you know as soon as you play on the floor with the pipes and drums, if it tunes right, if it feels right, it it feels right. Like it's.
Yeah.
I think some tunes suit bands more than others, and some tunes we've played in the past, like the first time we've played them, you just know, that's going to be a good tune for you. Like I could still tell you where I was the first time we played some tunes, because the impact of it was like, oh wow, that's going to be really good. I can hear that in
Yeah.
the world.
Nice,
So
that's awesome, and it looks like you're having fun. Also, you're like, wow, that this great tune just to hear, but also to play, and it feels right from a listener point of view, and also from a playing point of view. So that's great. Tell me more about I messaged you about it, but the Stuart probably came to you and said, I think we should play the Rent. And you're like, oh, here we go. Every drummers are probably expecting the third tune, and you're like, nah, let's do something cooler. So, what's the background behind that tune? So, you guys first time playing it this year, right? Or last year, you played Cameron Rent as a Strasby in one of the MSR, and the tune that or the scores was your score, right? What's the story
yeah.
behind it?
Well, first of all, I asked Stuart if we could play the Rant.
Is there is there
And
actually
I,
funny enough?
I,
So go
I
ahead.
caught him off guard. I caught him off guard because for like 2-3 years, it's always kind of come up. He's always brought it up. He's like, we could play the Rant. We could play the Rant. And I was like, nah, I'm not playing it. I don't have time to write a score for that. I don't have the headspace and like, nah. And then COVID came and I had notes of it written in the back of an envelope from years before. Like the first three parts kind of done. So I was like, where is that envelope? So I like finally found it in my room here, and I sat down and just was messing about with it during lockdown. And I got it quite quickly. I got a draft of it quickly. Something that I could play from start to finish that was okay. And I sent it to a few people, and they were like, "Oh, there's some really good stuff in that." So then that kind of gave me the confidence to be like, "Right, okay, I'll work on what I've got." And I just kind of chipped away at it. I didn't. There was no pressure during lockdown, and I think that's what I needed. I needed to, not have a goal, and we don't have to play this next year. We'll know when I'll play this, but yeah. And then whenever we started talking about MSR tunes for 2022. That's this year, right?
Mhm.
I said, I've, I've finally done the Rant. And I sent it to the boys, and Stuart was like, oh, we're playing it. Let's do it. That's it.
Nice.
So, yeah, that was it. So, yeah, it was good. And when I sent it out to the drum corps, and they loved it, like, right away. They were all about it. So, yeah, I mean, it was a
It's
challenging,
awesome. You think it was? It's
a
funny you
challenge.
mentioned it was. Oh, there must be a delay. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say it was a challenging composition, but in some ways, but the parts that I thought would have been the most difficult to write were actually the easiest to write. Um, like Alex's most iconic parts for me were, obviously the first part, the fifth part, and the seventh part. Like for me, they're absolute highlights. So, but those parts came the quickest. I don't know why. I just they I think because I had played the tune for so long that my hands just kind of knew where to go. But some of the other parts were difficult because the piping wasn't what I expected it to be. Believe it or not, I feel like when you play Alex's score, you sing the tune to his score, but his score is very big picture, and it plays over a lot of the cool piping stuff. But it hits the big picture, and his score
Hmm.
is great. I love it. I still think it's great. But yeah, like I just thought for stylistically for what I was looking for, I wanted to kind of highlight some of the other stuff in the piping that people maybe don't hear. Pipers hear it, but drummers probably didn't. So um, it's funny. Whenever I sent the full recording to someone, um, they came back and told me how different the tune sounded. So I took that as a compliment because they finally weren't listening to the Cameronian rant based on Alec Duthart's score. They were listening to it as the Cameronian rant tune, like on its own. So
Yeah,
I figured
that's
that was a good sign.
that's super interesting because Ross Miller, who I talked to a few weeks ago, and it's going to be in one of the future episodes, but he played for quite a few pipers, quite a few drummers at the World Solos, and I said, oh, it must be quite challenging to memorize a lot of tunes, and he's like, for a drummer it's easy, you just have to play the rant. If you know the rant, then all drummers want to play it, so it's fairly easy. And it's funny that you're saying that because it's so true. Pipers might not, hear it that way, but for a drummer, we do hear Alex Duthart, score and then the tune because it's so present, unique, and I love that you're touching on. Maybe I didn't have, not stress, but maybe I didn't have pressure because it was the lockdown. It was no competition, but in another, it's a bold move and a risky move to take a score like this and put it into a competition aspect, unless you're one of the best in the world. But yet again, to do something unique and tasteful and kind of like has a twist. And maybe because you didn't have that pressure of the lockdown, like you described. I love that you're sharing that your hands just went and you felt pretty good about it.
Yeah, I think I wrote a ton of scores in lockdown. I was playing a bunch of other people's stuff and listening to quite a lot of like old pipe band recordings I hadn't listened to in years, and like I wrote all the big tunes, like Donald Cameron, The Rant, Pretty Marion, Little Cascade, like tunes I've always wanted to do something with, but just never had a reason to do it or had the time to do it. So yeah, I was like, you know what? If I write this and I'm not feeling it, I can just put it away. I don't need to. I don't need to work on it. But yeah, I kind of got into the groove of writing and quite enjoyed that. It was good. It's still,
That's great.
the, I wouldn't say the Cameronian rant's finished though. I'm not. I'm not gonna say it's not set in stone. I think the rant that we play next year will be a bit different to what we've done this year because practicing it for the solos dynamically I felt things different playing it more on my own than I did in the core. There's some little tweaks to the score that I think we will inevitably creep in, so it's just a, a piece that big is always going to have to evolve. It takes time to get the final product right, I think. But you only get that by playing as well, so it's catch-22.
Yeah, that's true. I'm sure the guys will appreciate listening to this and knowing that they'll have to relearn the score slightly different for next summer. The chips were quite interesting. You're probably mentioning the fifth and seventh part, where for those that are listening, they could go on the BBC website and listen to the band play. But the chips had another effect to it, which is quite interesting. When I was listening to it, at least. But yeah, and funny enough, like I obviously being a creative myself, like I expected, not expected, but the pandemic happened. 1 year, 2 years off. You could go one way or the other, right? As a creative, you could be losing it, or you could be like, "Oh my god, I'm going to explore things that I didn't, thought about before and didn't think about before," and that's exactly what you did, and it's awesome and refreshing to see a band like Inveraray. I'm just not saying that because you're here, but it's refreshing to hear a new or a same tune but a new drum score on top of it. Coming out of 2 weeks or 2 years of not playing, so that was great. I see the time, but I also really want to talk about the World Solos Drumming Championship that happened last weekend. This is your 10th overall and ninth in a row, or the 20th in a row and the 30th. I just can't remember.
10th in a row, 11th overall.
Overall, right. I I remember, and it's too bad Gus doesn't put them up anymore. But I remember a video. I think it's on YouTube. You play a hornpipe jig, and that was years ago. It was you didn't win that year, but I think you made top three. And
Oh,
yeah, I remember. I always listen to that video. It's awesome because again, super unique style that you have. Out of like, I love this performance, but out of like all the performance that you've done at the World Solo Jamming Championship in the past 10 years, 11 that you've won, which one is your favorite, you would say? Could be this year, but it could be also the early years. Is it the
2005
first one?
Hornpipe Jig, Bathgate Academy. No, the year before I won. That's my favourite ever performance at the solos.
Is that the one on
Favourite
YouTube?
ever. Yeah, that was great. That was because I was not. I was kind of naive to like. I didn't even, you know, I was just naive and playing like with a freedom that I didn't. I just wasn't thinking about anything. I was trying to play as good as I could, and I remember the crowd being really good that day. Have you been to Bathgate Academy? Have you been at the World Solos there?
No.
No. Well, it was just a school gym hall, but it has a balcony in it, and I just remember playing quite late on that day, and I had a mistake on the MSR going into the fourth part of Donald Cameron, and I was like, oh, I can't believe I've done that. But the hornpipe jig, I just went and played, and I wasn't really thinking about anything. I wasn't thinking about getting in the prizes. I was only my second year in the final. And I remember when I finished, like, the crowd went mental. It was like the best reception I've ever had at the World Solos.
Wow.
And I remember Stuart turning to me, or as we walked off the stage, he's like, that was amazing. That was great. And I was like, get out, like, get out the door. But, and then, and I remember Blair Brown he hadn't qualified. He didn't play in the final that day, I don't think. But him and Graham came out to see me afterwards, and they were like, "That was amazing," blah blah blah. And I was kind of like a bit shocked, to be honest. Like I'd never had that reaction before from anybody. So, um, that's the best. That's my favorite because of the reception
Right.
from the audience. That for me that's bigger than the win.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
It's funny that you wouldn't say a performance where you won, but I love that you're sharing, and it's also for listeners that can go on YouTube and listen to it. It's awesome. Yeah.
I mean, it's the MSR. The MSR the year that I won was pretty special as well. I knew I had played well, but all I could think about was it was a really hot. The room was really hot. My hands were sweaty, and I broke into Pretty Marion, and I thought, why 8 parts? Why did you put an 8 part reel in? I was like, how am I going to play the drag singles at the end of this? Like, it's like my hands were so sweaty. But yeah, and after that, Stuart said, he was like, "Oh, I've got goosebumps," and like I could see he was like, he felt the emotion in the performance. So that was kind of cool. And he still talks about those two performances.
Nice.
Um,
That's great.
so yeah,
What's I always listen to athlete or even musician that are really good at their craft, and they win one, they win two, they win five, they win seven, and they always say the pressure gets bigger and bigger as they win, because the pressure of losing is gonna end at one point. I mean, I hope that the later for you, but is the pressure of like being better than the year before and the year even before, and is this something that you feel approaching to the World Solos?
yeah. I'm not gonna lie. I didn't feel it this year though. I don't know. I think 2 years off kind of reset me a bit, and as well as it could. Um, I mean, it's the first time I've played in a lot of years where I haven't like been a bit wrapped up in like the potential outcome of the performance. Do you know what I mean? I was just thinking about trying to play the best I could play. I didn't go back and listen to any old recordings. I just I tried to like reset a wee bit and just play good music. And but next year, if you ask me the same question, I could be telling you something completely different. But yeah, like I read lots of books, like sports people and
Right.
podcasts and all the rest of it. Like I usually read a sports person's autobiography like September, October time to because there's always something. There's always something in one of those books where you think, you know what, that's quite interesting. It's interesting how they approached that or they thought about it or but we're playing music at the end of the day. Like it's not winning's great, but at the end of the day it's you can practice like it's a sport, right? You can put the effort in and the graft and all the rest of it, but when it comes to the day, you can only play like it's a musical instrument, and that's you don't have any control after that. So if you do the work, if you do the work and you come out on top, great. But if you do the work and someone else like plays better on the day, then there's nothing you can do. It's one of those things. I've been fortunate that I have been able to come out on top. Like I mean,
Yeah.
I'm very fortunate. But every year it's the same thing. I just try and play like I've never won it, even though it is in the back of your mind. But you have to kind of put it to the back of your mind and just play like you're trying to win it for the first time, or you're just trying to play better than you played the year before because you don't know what other people are doing. So once you start thinking about that, that just wrecks your head a bit. So I just try and compete with myself.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. You're saying that this year was um, good for you because you felt like you were playing the best music you could, as opposed to like feeling the pressure of like I need to execute every rhythm perfectly, or I need to be the most clinical. Where you're probably more like I just want to play
Yeah,
solid music that people
yeah. And
enjoy watching and listening,
I
and
purposely
that was the
put the
result.
camera on and ran in and Pretty Marion. Like, I'd never played Pretty Marion before. I played Alex score for years and years, but I'd never played my own. So I purposely put that in to give me something fresh to work on. Because I felt like if I had kept all the stuff I've always played, I would I would have been just um, probably more wrapped up in trying to win it again as opposed to like trying to dedicate the time to get the new stuff to where I think it needs to be at to to compete.
Right. Do you try stuff? Do you like you said the Cameron rant you might change it next year. Like do you during the solos try things that you may want to
Yeah,
tweak as a
inevitably.
core later
If
in
I
the
play
year?
a band score at the solos, there's usually a change in it somewhere. I think it's just because you're playing it more consistently and you feel it more with one piper. When you play with one piper, like you lock into that. You feel the phrasing much more than you do, playing in the band, like the real nitty gritty detail. So, um, yeah, it's always good. It's always good, I think, to do that and find those like minute details that maybe they go over the majority of the public's head musically, but when you know it feels right, then that's what you're playing for. You're playing for me. I'm playing for the feel, if it feels like it's the right thing to play, then I'm content. But when you're trying to when you're trying to fit a
That's
square peg
awesome.
into a
That's
round
great to
hole,
hear.
it's not enjoyable to play. And it could be one little phrase, or it could be a fla that just feels too busy, or whatever. It could be a simple change, but for me, it needs to feel right off my hands.
Right, right. Yeah, I love that you're focused on yourself, and the music and the feel of the music, and not like I need to be on top. I need to come at first, and kind of obsessed with the ranking at the end, which is great. What's
It's all
I see
good.
the time again.
Oh,
I feel like I could chat for another hour with you, but although you seems quite comfortable, I must say, out of all the guests so far, you've got little sit couch, chilling. You know, you could have poured yourself a little dram. That would have been perfect. But what's next for the next few months? So the band start to get back together
no,
soonish,
we usually
or in
get
January.
back together after the Remembrance Parade. So we do the Remembrance Parade in the town, and have our AGM, and then we usually get back to practice right after that. But practice um, once a week until probably Easter time, and one weekend a month. So just kind of new medley has kind of been discussed, but not 100%. Haven't written anything for it because haven't had anything confirmed. Um, I've written a new reel for the MSR, new four-parted reel, because obviously grade one's going to the four-parters next year. So that was kind of fun. I wrote that like the week before the World Solos. It came together quite quickly. Um, Not much. A couple of teaching trips in November. Um, a couple of trips January, February. But yeah, just work and band and family, and yeah, so
Just working.
it's
Yeah,
all good.
cool. Nice, nice. The winter, you deserve a good break after a busy season, and obviously the World Solos. So, it's funny. I was talking to Jake Jorgensen before, and he was like, I want the scores as early as possible, and then it depends on people, and their just bands and stuff like that. So I love to ask these questions because from the outside, you might think, wow, like they must be like from September 1st all the way through to, the walls. But, bands are different.
Yeah, we're
They
kind
come back
of
together at different time and
we're
different,
pretty
yeah.
laid back up until Christmas, and then once the New Year comes, I think everybody kind of it's a bit of a grind until Christmas. But I think after New Year, everybody kind of shows up and they have the stuff off, and there's been a lot of changes made between now, or the music being handed out, and Christmas break, and then everything kind of solidifies a bit after the New Year, and then yeah, we just kind of go once a week, uh, twice a week. For me, twice a week is a big commitment. All year, I can't do that. And yeah, we used
Didn't
to
you do
do a
it
Wednesday and a
before?
Sunday. Now I just two kids. I can't
Right.
give that much time up because it's okay if it's your little local band and it's just around the corner, like 10-15 minutes down the road. But when you commute like an hour and 15 minutes each way, that like eats into your time. So, and I'm also conscious of other people's time. So I would rather have everybody once a week as some people, you know, once a week over 2 nights because I've got to be there both times. So it's just I think
Yeah.
whenever you provide people with
I
an
was gonna
option,
say you have to be there.
then they'll choose what suits them. But if there's only one option, then you hope that they just show up all the time. most of the time.
This is this is the best tip of the hour, guys. It's if you give from the best one of the best lead drummer in the world is if you give two options to your core, they might end up having to pick one of the two, and you have to be there twice a week. But if you give them one
That's it.
option, you're
It's
sure they're
just
gonna show up, and you just show up.
it's more of what
Smart.
suits me. For me, it's more beneficial. For me, it's more beneficial to go once a week, and if someone in the core is new or they need a bit of extra time, they come to me. Like they can come to the house. I'm happy to give up my time at home and work one on one with someone that's just into the core, because for me that's got more weight to it than sitting around the table. Because you know yourself, you sit around the table with people, it's easy to hide. You're sitting across the table from someone, you get the fine detail of the style and the execution, and you can point things out to them that you might not want to point out in a group for various reasons. So I would rather do
Mm-hmm.
that and get them one on one, and or in small groups if everybody lives kind of close by. Like I've been doing that for a while now, and it's quite beneficial, and it's it's kind of chilled out as well. It's not like come over and have a cup of coffee and play a bit and get through whatever we need to get through. It's not a
Mm-hmm.
it's not a hardcore like one on one session. That's
Yeah, yeah. Do you prefer that? Funny enough, I always heard. I think it must have been Ryan Canning when he took over shots. I've always heard that he would do regular one-on-one session with a very small group of people to get the style quicker to a big band, as opposed to get a big band together. I mean, it's a lot more people to manage and kind of implement a style. Do you prefer this approach of like regular one-on-one
yeah,
or multiple
definitely, and
one-on-ones with people as opposed to a
it's not
core
something that I really
practice?
want to start right away. Like I'll let people come in and get a few weeks and get some of the material going, and you quickly see like where their weaknesses are, not as a player, but their weaknesses in terms of the style, like how they're going to fit into the style, or maybe maybe they come from maybe they've played in bog hall and they've always played like a certain movement this way, but I play it a completely different way. That takes a long time that takes a long time to change. So I just feel like players hear that more when it's one on one. But obviously we're going to band as well, but that's just an extra. And as well as that, it kind of shows me how committed they are. Like if they want to give up their time to come to my house and go one on one and put the time in to change, then that's a good sign. That's a good sign for me, and it's a good sign for the team. So I'm all about that.
That's fair. Yeah, if they want to have a cup of coffee at your place, and play
There's
some drums,
always
it means
coffee
that
at
they're
mine.
quite committed to playing in the core.
There's always coffee.
Um, always cup of coffee. Yeah, well, that's great. Just hearing from the inside, I feel like I hope the listeners are enjoying this conversation. We had some in-depth knowledge into how you run the core, which always interested in how managing people and practices and writing music and stuff like that. So yeah, thank you so much for jumping on. Anything you want to promote? The last more thing that you want to promote? You have a
What's that,
CD
sorry?
coming up, right, with Inveraray? You have an album. You have an album coming up
Yeah,
with
the
Inveraray,
pre-rolls
right,
concert
from the
album
past
should be
concert.
out for Christmas. Fingers crossed. It's all off to production now. Sounds good. I've listened to it a few times, and it is sounding really good. Um, but yeah, it's just the usual. Always
Nice.
still doing Skype lessons, still doing my online teaching. Drumming on demand is still got I'm still adding scores to that regularly. Yeah, just cruising along.
Nice. Usual. Cool. Well, if anyone wants some lessons with you, they can go on your website, or Scores, they can go on Drumming on Demand, which is an amazing platform that you are running. Gus is running as well. Gordon Brown's got Scores on it as well. Any level, which is awesome. It's a great source of library to get your hands going. Yeah, thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your month tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me.